I feel a bit like Jean on the last night of the Panto every year, when you were dragged onto the stage to smile at everybody and wave and cheer. You never seem keen to do that. Well, me too. I'm backstage, much as you are, first me at the background making mistakes that nobody knows who's made the mistake. Anyway, it seemed appropriate to acknowledge the last few years. I'm theoretically down as 80, but in fact I've only had 79, and old age begins at 80. So I've got another year yet, so I can really enjoy this next year. So I thought I'd like to share my unmerited good luck and good fortune over all these years, because that's what it's been. Certainly unmerited, that's for sure. So, wondering what to say, I asked Stuart, where's he gone? Oh, he's there. So I said, what shall I say? Oh, he said, that's easy. Thanks for coming, see you in 10 years.
Do you mean that?
Anyway, I thought you deserved a bit more than that, so coming out on a cold night and so on. So I've pared it right down to just under 2.5 hours.
Well, it's warmer in here.
First I have to say thanks to my grandparents for having the foresight to let the father stay on at school. Because in those days, it was into the mill, earning money, that's how it was. There was no, it was a privilege to stay on at school. And he did so, and he was very good at doing schoolwork, a very good painter as well at the time, even when he was about 10 or 12, I think it was. So then he managed to get to be an article clerk to the town clerk of Nelson, which got him on to the next stage of becoming a proper solicitor. And he married my mother in 1930, just after he'd qualified. And then it was a bit avant-garde, as you might say, for Nelson, because they honeymooned in France on the northern shore, and that's where Father made his first mistake. It was a very rough crossing, and Mother was a bad sailor at the best of times. And they got to this little pension where they were staying with his family. I think he'd met them in Manchester University at one stage. They were staying there, and Mother retired to bed, being seasick, you know, terrible journey. Father deliberately caused it to be a bad journey, you know how these women are. And in the evening, the family said, would he like to join his young bride upstairs, or would he have dinner with the family? And he chose dinner. Maybe that's why I didn't arrive till 5 years later. She always said that she never had a crossword out of him for 12 years. So I bet she gave him up for that night. He was very mild-mannered, resilient, hard-working, just sort of typical Lancastrian, really. And yeah, just like you, Robin. But not like the Yorkshireman who lived on the moors, way above on the north moors. And his mother and father died, and he was on this farm, and he decided he needed a wife to help him run the place. So he came down to Doncaster. It took him 2 days on horseback. He came to Doncaster, and he found this wench, a woman, and he decided to marry her and set off back for the hills. Well, they'd gone up 3 or 4 hours journey on this horse, and the horse stumbled. And the fellow said, that's once. And he went a bit further on, and it stumbled again, and he got off and shot it. Well, his wife was furious. The horse was going to run the farm for them, it was all they had. He said, that's once. Now, Mother was a typical East Lancashire, hard-working, thrifty, knew her own mind and decided everybody else's mind. Politically slightly to the right of Genghis Khan. Very seldom wrong, she said, but she actually was a very good friend and listener to anybody who was in trouble. And those who knew her, I think particularly Janet and James here, who knew when deciding if Ribble Valley was good enough for her after Father had died, must realise she had mellowed a lot by then. So what you saw then was a very meek and mild version. So I have to thank them for my education, obviously, because they'd got on, moved on, and they decided I was going to have a proper education, so they sent me away. Sent me to the Isle of Man for 5 years, and, which was very good, actually. Very useful. It did give me a degree of independence. Anyway, that was a smashing education. And I knew when I was 12 what I wanted to do, because the PDSA had a mobile caravan that they brought into Fleetwood every Saturday morning, and I went to see what they were up to, and Father being town clerk meant we got stood at the front, so I got into the thing to see what they were doing, and I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. So I was very fortunate, because there's so many people who struggle around these days who don't know what they do want to do. They don't know where to go. So then there was 6 universities doing veterinary degrees, but 3 of them you had to have done national service first. Well, we played soldiers at school, we'd done certificate A and all that sort of thing, and I didn't want to waste time doing that. So national service. So I had the choice then of 3. Well, I got a place at Liverpool, and then I applied to Bristol, but unfortunately you just send a photograph to Bristol, and they refused me. Anyway, I got an interview at Peterhouse in Cambridge, and you had to have, well, you'd pass their exam anyway, and then you had 3 interviews with dons who decided whether they wanted you or not, if you could make a good enough case. And the last one I had said, now my boy, what are your views on politics? And taking my father's line, he was a returning officer at Fleetwood. I said, or it was Lancashire, I think, it was Lancashire then. Taking his view, I said, shoot all politicians, they're all liars. And this rather stopped the conversation. He went on to something else eventually when he thought of something else. But anyway, it turned out I was talking to the professor of modern political history. I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, I was lucky enough to enjoy 6 years at Cambridge, which is a magnificent treat for anybody. Because the first 3 years you're learning as you go along. Well, we're learning all the time, but we're learning how things ran and so on. The second 3 years you watch all the new ones coming along, and you can see them all struggling to find their way, which is very nice because you know it. We had a very good boat club while I was there, and we had 1 year, we had so many successes for which you get your oars if you win things, that we ran out of oars to give ourselves. We hadn't got any left. So we had to buy a few, but even then we'd put 2 on 1. But it was a brilliant time, was that. And of course we were hailed, it was the best year the college had had in 150 years. So we were hailed as the great heroes of the place. But actually the real heroes were next year, because they could only go one way, and that was down. We'd taken all the cream off the top, and they were sunk. But anyway, that was that. So I started in Reading after that, in a big practice. Whereas the horse vet, the 12 vets, the horse vet wouldn't see anything other than a horse unless you were related to royalty, and he might look at the dog then, but otherwise he would only do horses. And he was the Olympian horse thing and so on, and he had 4 cars a year. They had to be run in before he got them, and then after 3 months he changed to a new one, because he was up and down the country all over the place. It was fantastic what he did. So that was that one. Then moved to Coventry with a very interesting chap. Yes, anyway. And then he Welshed on it, so I left there. And I was very lucky to find Fred Pingram down in London, who'd just driven into a lamppost. He was so overworked, he was desperate, he must have been to take me on. But anyway, we settled down and became a partner there. Then we expanded to Pettswood, another place, and then to Catford. And we've got another brilliant new partner, David Ward, who's a world expert on fossilised sharks' teeth.
Yeah, a lot of work.
There aren't that many, but anyway. So for becoming a partner, we moved to a house had built in house, a religious building rather, and that was a bit of a dead loss really, because the roof was S-shaped, the timbers hadn't been properly sort of finished up S-shaped. the electrician had been fired, so he went around driving nails through all the wires everywhere. A few years later, because they all started moving and shorting, so they all had to be replaced. They used central heating with iron, steel and copper, so it was a nice electric cell, so they had to change all the heating. I thought, I can do as well as this. So then we were lucky enough to find the barn with planning permission, and that was because the fellow who owned it was a very keen polo player, touch of the Prince Philip's, and so he got permission to convert the barn for a stud groom. Unfortunately, his wife caught him where he shouldn't have been caught, and there was a hasty sale. And he wanted to get rid of it, so we were extremely lucky in that. And it was also a time when you couldn't get mortgages, so everybody was extending premises, so there were magazines to tell you what to do. So that was very, very handy, really, because I did all the barn and strength of that, wiring, plumbing, a lot, just out of that. It wasn't a rush job, really, it was just 20 years. We had some help from Jack Greenwood.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and you know Jack, yes. Yes. He's a good lad, as Jack. He was doing his own place up, so we had something in common, and he sort of guided me, did the plastering, which I couldn't do. We did have a few problems with the building inspector. The first one was an old-fashioned chap, little chap, and he just walked in, he could walk under the beams upstairs. Oh, that'll be fine, he said, that's fine, fine. Drainage, we just pour some of this, he's very searching. Oh, that's fine, he should have stopped the drain up to 24 hours and see if the level had gone down. He just put a bit of dye in. Oh, very good this. Oh, that's fine, he said. So we were very pleased with him, and then the new one came along. Do you remember Dave Fitchie? Yes. Yes. No. Well, he was a little more tiresome. He wanted us to turn the stairs windows upside down because the distance from the floor wouldn't provide sufficient ventilation. All sorts of things he wanted. And we eventually got rid of him.
I wonder where he is. He's under the floor.
In fact, Jack Greenwood told him never to visit his property again. He should shoot him or something. Anyway, that was that bit. So back at work, we decided, we got fed up with assistants who came, wanted you to change everything to suit them. You did, and then they left. Things like that. So you got a fresh instrument, did a fresh way of doing things, and then they upped and went. So you had to start again, and you had to advertise. Of course, a couple of months to that, then you to interview somebody, they had to give 2 or 3 months notice. So it's like 6 months going at part staff. So we got fed up with that, and it was David's idea that we leased out the premises. We had 3 premises, and to different folk, and let them get on with it. We didn't do anything at all, except collect the rent, which was a very satisfactory arrangement. It's still going on. So we got these 6 folk, I suppose, working in 2 or 3 pairs in different surgeries, and all we do is collect the rent. So that's how it should be. So that enabled early retirement in '88 to come up here just when Anthony was about to go to school, which is this thing in itself, really.
He's still there, isn't he?
Well, Richard being a Congregationalist, or URC at the time, or as the father was, we went there first, and our kids were the only ones there. So they used to play with toys up and down the pews, running these trucks up and down, which was extremely disturbing and learning nothing. So she moved to Trinity because she'd heard Jim Needham, and of course a pantomime came along, and that was one of the greatest things about Trinity. Well, thank you, Jim, very much for running that. So that. So I got caught up in the renovations because Jim rang up one day and said, I hear you've done some building at your house. So I said, yes. He said, you're on the property committee, so there was a meeting tonight. So I found I was on that. So it's thank you to all the friends that we made in Trinity and Ribble Valley and round about, all the various things. And thanks to you, so many of you, for coming here tonight. Now, the only other thing really is that we should have Lonely Goat Herd playing in the background. And as Chief Goat Herd, we have enough for, I think, for 16 goats at the moment, which is brilliant. And then thank you for the Duke for looking after us.
Yeah.
But more important in a way, much more, absent friends. Now, Kath and Roy Thornton were the first ones we really got friendly with when we came here, I think. I did a lot with Roy when we were trying to raise money for the previous restorations. So, yes, I'd like to remember Kath and Roy. Also, Jim Paul, who's a very good friend. Yeah. We had many wine drinking evenings there. Mike Grindleton, of course, who was everybody's friend, helped everybody, did everything, sort of most willing of all, really. And finally, of course, Ron Hornby, who was my mate on getting the sound wrong, and I could always do it. So those friends are missing and should be here, and I would have liked to be here. I feel them to be here in spirit somehow, I don't know why. The other two, really, are Kath Paul, who's the other side of the world, and enjoying herself very much. I expect you've all had emails from her one way or another. And Sheila Harrison, who's got the pox. No, I'll tell her you've got this printed the line here. She's minding the grandchildren who've got chicken pox.
Good shot.
Extremely thankful for the good health I enjoy, apart from these. But that's brilliant, no problems at all. Anthony was saying, "You've never been in hospital?" "No, don't want to go there." We were very lucky to have the 3 children. So we've got an excellent daughter, who's gifted musically, but she don't practice. Looks after the dogs very well. We've got Michael, who is more stoical somehow, determined, but at least he's carrying on the family name of Smith. We were going to have 4, and then Anthony arrived.
And you reached perfection.
After that, we realised that 3 was sufficient. Most of all, I have to thank Bridget for putting up with me for over 45 years. Which reminds me of the chap who was walking along the Thames. This is my favourite story. And we saw this bottle bobbing in the river, so picked it out, took the top off, and popped the genie, of course, as in the best traditions. Grant you a wish, master. So he said, "Oh, well," he said, "I've got to be in New York next week. I'm scared of flying. How do I get from London to New York? I want a bridge built." So the genie looked a bit puzzled. He said, "Well, this is a bit much this year. A hell of a long way, is that, and all the rest of it. Big performance, not quite me, really." So he said to this fellow, he said, "This is a hard job for me." He said, "Is there anything else you'd like instead?" So the fellow thought for a moment. He said, "Yes, I'd like to understand the mind of a woman." So the genie said, "Would you like lights on the bridge?" There's so much to be thankful for, it's just marvellous, so wonderful. So, thank you for coming, see you in 10 years.